Good morning from Portsmouth Harbour Station, where you can catch the ferry over to the Isle of Wight, which I have done before, 8 years ago in 2018, and at the time they ran old London Underground 1938 stock tube trains on the railway on the island, but these were withdrawn on the 3rd of January 2021. The line was meant to reopen in March. It did so in November of that year with newer old tube trains, ones which ran on the District line from 1978, the D stock. So I'm finally going to get to ride these quite a few years after they entered service, or re-entered service, should I say.
If we tried it, we can make it. But don't we ever just take some chances and stop your thinking and start your living. Get your shoes on, we're going dancing. 'Cause little problems, we could solve them. Try another, but I know you've got one. But there's no hurry, the lifelight's calling. In the driving to Austin.
And welcome to Ryde Pier head station on the Isle of Wight, where I am intending to visit every station on the island line today, and this is definitely one of the quirkiest stops in the entire country. I mean, not only is it out at sea, but it has what's very clearly a disused set of platforms here, and what makes it even quirkier is the trains on this line, the former D-Stock District Line London Underground trains. Well, it still has Metro Camel written down there, the makers of the original D-Stock trains, and they look so similar to what they used to be. There is a line diagram reminiscent of the tube. Those are all the stations we'll be visiting today. Various of these old District Line trains were repurposed for the National Rail network, and the first line to get them was the Marston Vale line, which runs between Bedford and Bletchley. We were actually on that line only a couple of weeks ago, but they really changed the interior of them and gave them front-facing high-back seats, but this looks so similar to what it would have looked like when it ran on the District Line. It's just been given a bit of a blue colour instead of the green, so I feel like I've stepped into some sort of alternate reality where I'm on a Victoria Line train that's outside. So there did actually used to be a tramway out on the pier before the railway came about, and that pathway there only opened up in 2023. That used to be the decrepit route of the old tramway. And our first stop is Ryde Esplanade, where you can catch a hovercraft service over to Portsmouth, but I've just opted to catch the ferry instead so that I could use Pierhead Station. You can see the second track and second platform here too, which is no longer in use, and trains definitely can't use it because there's a permanent bollard fence in the way. It's good that both the hovercraft and the ferry is valid with a rail ticket, and I've noticed that the ferry itself costs about, I think, £40 or so, which is quite a lot, but you can get a train ticket for cheaper, but just you cannot get one from Portsmouth Harbour to Ryde Pierhead. So if you just get one from one of the other stops, it could be valid. These stations have a weird mix of the heritage southern green signs and then the blue Southwestern Railway signs. They just don't really fit in on this line. So why does the Isle of Wight have old tube trains? Well, it's all to do with that tunnel, because it would regularly flood. So they raised the track so that wouldn't happen, which meant that it was too small for regular trains to pass through. So they went with the next best thing. And it's right here beside the tunnel in Ryde, where you get a great view of the only remaining year-round hovercraft service in the world that heads back over to Portsmouth. And we saw it depart from the other side of the Solent last year on an explore around the city of Portsmouth. Hoping we might be able to see this one leave soon. It doesn't shoot out as fast as it does on the other side of the Solent at Portsmouth. I thought I was going to get sprayed by the fans at the back like I did last time, but that's not the case. Right, I'm going to walk up towards the next station now on the Island Line, right beside this sandy beach, which is the largest on the Solent. The tide is quite in at this time though. Perhaps if we come back later, it would look a lot larger. Ah, here you go. I knew it was a wide sandy beach. You just need to get to the other side of the marina. This is glorious. I'm loving Ryde so far. I'm loving the Isle of Wight so far. I feel there's just so much to mention at the beginning of this video that I'm going to try and space it out as we visit the stations across the day, because the Island Line is just one of the most curious railways in the country. It's now on to its third generation of old tube trains. The first ones here was the standard stock, which was introduced to the London Underground in 1923, but they moved over to the island after the line had been electrified in 1967. The 1938 stock replaced them in 1989. I realise it might be quite tricky to keep up with the dates. And of course you now have the D stock from 1978 that were introduced in 2021. I've already visited Ryde Pier Head and Ryde Esplanade, or Esplanade. I've never quite known how to say that word. And there is a third station in Ryde as well called St John's Road, which was the original terminus of the line when opened in 1864, and it would have connected with the tramway that ran up to the pier head, which closed in 1969. And just to keep up with the dates a little bit more, the pier itself opened in 1814 and was at the time the longest pleasure pier in the world. Of course, that accolade is now being given to Southend. So rather brilliantly, on the walk to Ryde St John's Road station, I'm passing by the Isle of Wight Bus and Coach Museum, which does allow free admission. So I've just quickly come into the car park here, where there's an array of old buses, which is quite cool. This is almost like it's foreshadowing a part 2 to this little Isle of Wight adventure. But I think the buses I'll be catching tomorrow won't quite be as old as some of them here. So I've made it to Ryde St John's Road station, which I think is where all the signalling on the line is now centred. There's even an old semaphore signal there. It is also where the depot is located for the Island Line, so you do see various D-stock trains in there. There also seems to be an additional platform here where some trains can terminate and won't go all the way through to Ryde Pier Head. Kind of like what they did when the line first opened. Now, when they closed the line to allow for upgrade works and the introduction of the D-stock trains, they made it very accessible. But I don't think they've managed to really do that here, because you have the footbridge over the platforms, and even this doesn't look like it's a possible step-free route because there is actually a step here. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, When the tube trains came over to the Island Line and then became part of the National Rail network, they get given a designated class number. So the standard stock was the class 485, the 1938 stock was the class 483. For some reason, they've done it out of order though, because the D-stock trains here now are the class 484. And you may have noticed that all of the stations on the line so far have these heritage totem pole style signs, which are in the southern green colour, which are very similar to the one we saw at Trimley station just the other day, the penultimate stop before Felixstowe, which was coloured blue. So I presume that's to denote a different railway company, which was probably the Great Eastern Railway. And now that I've completed the 3 Ryde stations, it's time to visit one which I won't be able to leave. So just like Ryde Pier Head, this is another contender for weirdest station in the country, because you cannot leave Smallbrook Junction. It's the newest stop on the line, opening in 1991 purely to connect with the Heritage Railway. That's all you can do. It's the only station in the country which has no entrance or exit. That should at least give you a clue though, that there used to be more railways on the Isle of Wight, and the first one to open was between Cowes and Newport in 1862, and that was extended through to Ryde in 1875, which would have been straight through here at Smallbrook Junction. But the line down towards Newport closed as part of the Beeching Cut in 1966, but it was saved and transferred to a heritage railway in 1971, but it took until 91 for it to actually be brought through to connect with the Island Line here. And I won't be catching a steam train today, so you could argue that I'm not exactly visiting every station on the Isle of Wight, but the only ones which count for me are national rail stations, not heritage ones. But I did at least manage to just catch a steam train departing as soon as I arrived here. And this begs the question, what constitutes visiting a station? How do you actually tick one off? Because in this instance, you can't leave the station, so the rules shouldn't dictate that you have to leave or enter a station. It should more just be get off a train and get on another service, which is exactly what I'm doing. And Ryde St John's Road and Smallbrook Junction are the only 2 stations so far which are new for me. Because when I visited the Isle of Wight before in 2018, I got on the train at Pier Head, I rode to the end of the line at Shanklin, and then I walked along the coast back to Lake and caught the train again to Esplanade and spent the afternoon there. I didn't spend nearly as long on the Isle of Wight as I probably should have done and probably have wanted to, and I remember the dot matrix screen there was saying that the 1640 train was on time, but it was 1643. It wasn't on time. So of course I was always going to come back to the Isle of Wight at some point to visit the other stations if I do want to visit every single one in the country, even if here at Smallbrook Junction I can't leave it. That's an old sign. The penalty for trespassing on the railways nowadays is £1,000, not 200. And what's brilliant is that because there's no steam trains due now that that one has left, no one's here to catch it, and everyone who was on that train has just gotten on the service that was heading for Ryde. So I literally have the station to myself. Well, I am by myself, apart from the station porter over on the Heritage Railway platform. It must get quite lonely here. I mean, you've got a while before any trains are due. But then again, I feel like I would really like the solitude that you can find here. If I have a book or some music to keep me company as well, it wouldn't be too bad. So the next station is Brading, and don't worry, I can leave this one. It does say way out on this sign. And it's another rather intriguing one because, I mean, there's a significant gap beside the Shanklin platform here, where there was definitely more tracks once upon a time, wasn't there? And yes, there was a little branch to a place called Bembridge from here, which was in operation from 1882 to 1953. And that is what this signal box is all about over there, which I think sometimes can be opened up. So unlike some of the other stations on the Island Line, where the platforms were raised to make it more accessible, I think the track bed here was actually lowered instead. And to make the other platform accessible, there is now what they call a barrow crossing over the railway, which I do think actually used to be a public footpath anyways, it seems like. And Brading is glorious. This is a contender for favourite station on the line. This just feels very historical and quaint. The other platform wasn't always accessible though. Back during the 1938 stocks run, the second platform was actually disused. I think this bridge was very unsafe, but they reinstated a passing loop here so as to provide a half-hourly service on the line, because previously it was every 20 and then 40 minutes to get 2 trains an hour. But it's not actually a half an hour service anymore. It seems to be more so every 40 or 45 minutes. It's not consistent. I've decided to go for a bit of a walk in Brading, and it was quite a climb, especially in the sun, but it was worth it to come here to Brading Down for this incredible view, which is overlooking a Roman villa, or at least it's hidden within the visitor centre down there, which reminds me of when I passed by Fishbourne Roman Palace. That was a very similar situation. But I can see the sea, and from the next station I will actually be back beside the coast. This is now making me wonder, what is the highest point on the Isle of Wight? I'm not saying it is here at Brading Down. That ridge over there looks like it might beat us anyways. But this is brilliant. The line is still frequent enough that you get time to explore at the stations. And why wouldn't you to come and visit a place like this? This is amazing. And looking the other way, I think that's towards Bembridge, which is where the former railway branch would have headed to. Well, with that incredible view in that direction, let's actually take the public footpath that crosses over the railway tracks at Brading Station. And just like that, I emerge back out at Brading Station, which is definitely my favourite one on the line. I've not even been to the other ones yet. So the station still acts as a passing loop today, so any second now my train should be arriving around that corner. And that is every station on the Isle of Wight visited, because I've done Lake and Shanklin before. For the sake of the video though, I still will visit Lake and Shanklin for completionist purposes, and considering I took a coast walk between the two last time, how about this time I take a coast walk from Sandown to Lake? And it's just occurred to me, this might only be the second county where I visited all of the stations. London, of course, was the first. There's one which is really easy to complete, and that is Rutland, because it only has one station, which I've not been to yet. And there's a brilliant fact about the Isle of Wight. It is the smallest county in England, but only half of the time. When the tide is in, it's smaller than Rutland, and when the tide is out, it's larger than Rutland, apparently. Well, this is a nice way to be greeted at Sandown. A plant pot that looks like the D-Stock Class 484 trains, but also there's one of the previous 38 stock trains, the Class 483s. Wow, well, Sandown is glorious. What a great view towards the cliffs in that direction, where I do see a little monument sticking out of it. I spotted that same monument from the viewpoint up in Brading. I'm not heading in the direction of the cliffs though. I'm going to pass under Sandown Pier in the direction of Lake. Well, this is looking to be a really beautiful walk over to Lake. It's not the longest coast walk in the world, but it's a beautiful section nonetheless. That is a pretty mental cliff face. I remember having quite the climb up from the beach to reach Lake Station before, so obviously I'm going to have to do that again now, aren't I? So you can see how far I've walked down from Sandown Pier, and I've reached a point where I can now start to climb up the cliffs to reach Lake Station. But I've given myself enough time until the train. It's a rite of passage, I have to do it. If you come into the coast, you have to put your feet in. Now the other day, when I did this in Felixstowe, it was freezing. I worry it's going to be the same today. It's not as bad. It's not as bad. I really struggled to acclimatise to it last time. So I guess it's not too far down there where Shanklin is. Kind of hard to believe I was there 8 years ago. The tide's going out and it's actually really shallow, so I can actually walk quite far into the water here. I knew the seagulls would fly away. I wanted to get a nice shot of them. I should point out as well that at this point on top of the cliffs there is a tourist attraction known as the National Poo Museum, which just so happens to be situated in a former war battery. But it is temporarily closed as they've actually gone on tour to celebrate its 10th anniversary. So if you've ever entertained the idea of going to the Isle of Wight, perhaps that might sway you to come. Alright, well, the climb begins, and this does bring back great memories from visiting Shanklin. I remember seeing the beach from this height before. And I've made it to Lake, where I'm on the hunt for a lake which doesn't exist. I feel like no matter what way I face to try and get the lake sign in the shot, I'm just going to be squinting into the sun, so you just might have to bear with me for this clip. Here's the thing, there's no lake at Lake. Yeah. The name derives from an Old English word called lacu, which means the place at the stream. I don't even know where the stream is, but there's no lake at Lake. And whilst Brading might be my favourite station on the line, Lake is definitely my least favourite. It's a boring single platform affair with nothing going for it. It opened in 1987. It would be the newest station on the line if Smallbrook Junction didn't exist. And all that remains for me to do is one last station at Shanklin, where I'm just going to go to the end of the line and reverse on the same train back to Ryde. So I'm only going to have about 10 minutes to dash around and get all the clips I need. Actually, speaking about how just nothing this station is, I've just realised that there's no seats in the shelter. I don't know if I've ever come across another station without seats. Okay, end of the line at Shanklin. That is now every station on the Island line on the Isle of Wight in one video. It never used to be the end of the line though. It's probably the station I remember the most. It used to continue further to Ventnor, but that closed in 1966. And there's a great little art piece here right at the end to welcome you to Shanklin with a steam train and a 1938 stock. Not dead yet. They kind of are now. Though I think a couple of the units were given to different heritage railways. The Isle of Wight Steam Railway might actually have one. Another thing I remember, and it's probably closed now, it is, but on the ticket office window over there, You really can't make it out because of the glare, but there is a Network Southeast logo. I'm surprised that's still there. I have enough time to pop outside the station. Let's see if we can spot the Network Southeast logo from this side. Let's see. Yep, there you go. Just have to... There you go. I can't go that much further because then it becomes a glare. But you can spot it. Well, there we go. That is every station on the Island line. I'm about to catch the District line. I feel like I make this joke every time. All the way back to the other end of the line at Ryde Pier Head. I was going to get off at Esplanade, but I figured it'd be nice to actually then take a walk back along the pier into the town and to my hotel, because I am staying here tonight and there will be a part 2 on the island coming tomorrow, where I catch a bus route all the way out to what is probably the most infamous spot on the Isle of Wight, and that is the Needles. I'll see you then. Thank you for watching. Subscribe so you don't miss the video.